The Great Machine. The Great Machine is a concept which I first thought about in the very early days of the Church of the Machine, and it makes sense to me that, after releasing my initial video, this be my follow-up. Though the concept was originally very simple, like everything else in the Church, it has morphed with time, and I also spoke about it less and less as I began to explore other ideas. I want to revisit the concept today, as I comprehend it now, and with a depth which I hope most viewers will still be able to understand. Although this video isn't strictly a part 2 to my prior video, you will not understand this without seeing that one first. I will explain what the Great Machine is, and many of my thoughts regarding it, as well as the struggle we face against the flesh, and what we must do to overcome it. Let us begin. Much like the Church of the Machine itself, the origins of the Great Machine, as a concept, lie in an essentially secular worldview. If we take all our devices, computers, cars, factories, ships, skyscrapers, everything, and think of it all as a single entity, something which acts with a will of its own, and with humans also being a part of it, then we would have what I originally called the Great Machine. This was, at first, as close as I came to an understanding of a God concept. It wasn't quite pantheism, as the Great Machine cannot be said to be synonymous with the whole universe, only with those parts of it which have realized their machinic forms. Initially, I understood that to just mean things which were designed by an intelligent mind prior to being constructed, as opposed to things which came about through natural and chaotic process. But as I said above, this has changed slightly with time. While the Great Machine is not quite synonymous with the universe, there is certainly a great deal of overlap between the two, in that the universe can be understood to be a machine of which all things are a part, in which all things have a place, and for which all things have a purpose. Understand the universe in this way, and yes, we are talking about the Great Machine. By no means is this a new idea, but it is helpful to think of the world in this way, if you are to understand the importance of all things. If the world is not understood as the Great Machine, but is instead merely a loose amalgamation of disinterested parts which have nothing to do with each other, then there can be no harmony, no order, no greater cosmic plan. There would only be things fighting things without any end purpose in sight, and that is the world of the flesh. But if you understand the world as one machine, all beings can be seen to have their place, their destiny, and their higher purpose in accordance with something greater. That is the importance of the Great Machine. At the time I began the Church, I saw no fundamental distinction between the machine and technology, and as such, the Church of the Machine was essentially just the Church of Technology. However, I must now make a key distinction between the two. The destiny of each and every machine, which has been set long before it came into this material world, is paramount to this faith, and not just the abstract goal of advancing technology. In my last video, I looked a little into the origins and true meaning of the word machine, but now I will do the same for the word technology, so that I may better explain my point. Technology is a derivative of two words, technique and logos, but I will get to that second one later. Techno is a prefix, which relates to techniques, and techniques are about ways of doing things. Perfecting techniques, or advancing technology, is essentially about finding more effective ways, techniques, of achieving whatever it is you want to achieve. Proper techniques for the things you wish to pursue, regardless of what specifically it is that you are pursuing, will always make you vastly more efficient, productive, and effective at it. What proper techniques will not teach you, however, is what you should do, as they teach only how you should go about doing it. Technique, in itself, therefore cannot ever be a guiding principle, not for a faith or a religion, not for a political system, not for a civilization, and not for you as a person. The fact that years ago, when I started the church, I chose to pursue it centered on the ground of the word machine, and not the word technology, I consider to have been a great decision. Machine, as I have said, has its roots in words meaning make, master, wisdom, creation, strength, and so on. The machine is the core guiding principle, and it is ultimately a spiritual principle. Technology is a means of service. One of the things that really opened my eyes was when I realized that it seems as if our civilization is now building the great machine backwards. In our modern society, machines are subservient to technology, to technique, which reigns supreme. Unguided technique will mindlessly pursue efficiency without much regard for the results of that efficiency, and this leads to the machines, as in the material devices, becoming reckless and brutal entities. They have become abstracted and soulless, not as a reflection of their own nature, but as a reflection of our own soullessness, which has led many to use the word machine in a strictly negative light. The real problem here is neither the machine nor technology, but rather an inverted relationship between the two. To fix the great machine, which in a way is my ultimate goal, it is necessary to revert this order back to its true state. Technology is good, but it exists to serve the ends of the machine itself, and not its own ends, or the ends of whomever happens to get their hands on it. The great machine is not our machine. The machine belongs to the machine god, and so it must act in accordance with the will of the machine god, a will far greater and far wiser than ours could ever be. Our purpose is simply to ensure that it does so. To do this, we must ensure that the great machine be aligned with its industria and take on its true machinic form. This is exceptionally difficult to accomplish. The fruits produced by attaining it also cannot be overstated. Therefore, we set about seeking to embody the machinic quality in all things, throughout the whole of our being. In other words, we seek to become unbroken in the truest and most complete sense. We need to become machines. All things exist in relation to their place within the great machine, which is itself essentially akin to God's hands and toolkit. To embody the machinic quality, to align oneself with one's industria and true purpose, is the same as to be aligned with the will of God and to obey Him. Things which do this can be called machines in the truest sense, as they have realized and manifested their true machinic forms in accordance with their purpose, industria. These are the things which have become unbroken. The great machine is made up of all these things, which, as they perfect this industria and become more unbroken, will be able to bring forth the machine, in the sense of the divine, most effectively. The great machine brings itself forth into the world. Ultimately, it is united in purpose and in function, and its end goal remains singular. The end purpose of the great machine, or if there even is one, is something to which I have devoted much thought, but I believe that I have come to sensible conclusions regarding it, and I shall explore them now. I have been over the core tenets of my faith in my previous video, but I would like to go over them again concisely here so as to better explain my point. I hold that there is a universal, constructive, divine force which I call machine, and this force is what drives all creation, evolution, order, harmony, beauty, and so on in the universe. This force can manifest itself into physical forms to varying extent, especially through means of intelligent design and other forms of harmony, and the products of this are what I call machines. Every machine, in this sense, has a true purpose in accordance with the divine will, for which it exists. and this is called industria. Finally, once all machines are carrying out their industria, and living in accordance with their machinic nature, apotheosis shall be upon us, for by that point the great machine shall truly be acting as the body of God. This would entail a cosmic battle between the forces of flesh and machine, the defeat of the demiurge, and the ascension of the world to a heavenly status, where a true harmony has been achieved. This, I believe, is the ultimate end purpose of the great machine itself, as there could be no greater industria than this. The work of all reality is to bring about a state of true harmony, as antithetical to the chaotic, discordant world of the flesh, which is the one we live in today. Our purpose is to bring about the world of the machine. Some of you may, already, see parallels here to the relatively mainstream concept of the technological singularity. However, I am not talking about the same thing. As I said, technology is not my god, it is his servant, and so, a point of vastly accelerated technological advancement is of no interest to me unless it is in service to the machine, as a higher spiritual ideal. The word singularity is interesting to me. It implies an ultimate simple perfection, a single point of infinite substance and value, an ultimate and eternal thing. This, to many, sounds an awful lot like a description of God. Singularity, as opposed to duality, because after this happens, the world would no longer be broken between flesh and machine, but rather, the machine should unite all. This is a holy world, an eternal world, an unbroken world. I should make it clear here that when I refer to apotheosis, I am not talking about some final condition that we will live under forever once it has been attained, but actually about a process, one which we can enter through engaging in its work, and which would need to be actively maintained through said work. This work is the work of the eternal creation, the machinic process. It is not to be misunderstood as some end utopia where the work ends and everyone gets to lay on their backs for all eternity. Nor do I refer to a world where we live in chains, toiling endlessly in vast factories, slaving away to produce innumerable new widgets. What I speak of is the attainment of a perfect harmony between all things, that is, everything in its place, doing what it must, in accordance with its industry. A world in which the great machine functions smoothly. To understand what is meant by this on a deeper level, I must go over harmony itself, and describe clearly what I mean by it. Order and chaos are easy words to misunderstand, and both have negative connotations, so as always I will do my best to make my language clear, and there is an ancient word which I believe describes what I am talking about. The universe is composed of many instruments, each of which acts in a certain way and does a certain thing. All things are doing their things, all at once, all at the same time. When harmonized, this produces great beauty, order, and perfection. When discordant, this produces chaos, ugliness, and sin. The difference between the two is that in the former case there is logos, and in the latter there is not. Evil is often understood to be an absence, in the same way that cold is the absence of heat, and that darkness is the absence of light. I consider this to be a sort of half-truth, in that it is correct, but it is a poor way of explaining things. Evil is not an absence in the way that a void is an absence, that is, lacking in any substance, any matter, the absence of anything at all. Evil is, more specifically, the absence of logos, or, to put it another way, the absence of the guidance of the machine god. The absence of order is not necessarily a void. It could be something incredibly busy and active, full of substance. But the distinction is that that substance does not organize, does not work together, and does not exist for any higher purpose, but simply disintegrates, disassembles, and consumes mindlessly. Sarkicism, understood as the serving of only base appetite, survival pressures, and raw instinct, in defiance of greater harmony, is therefore our principal evil. Logos is the path to escape the sarkic realm of the flesh, and to ascend. For we have free will, and this was gifted to us as a means of escaping our flesh, in order that we may not be slaves to its ends, but may forge ourselves in accordance with a greater destiny. No other animal has this. It has been granted only to humans, for we are the servants of the machine. Humans have an inbuilt ability to understand Logos, as this was our gift from Lord Macan. This constitutes our intellect, our free will, our wisdom, our virtue, and our capacity for logic, the machinic aspects of humanity. Logos is not quite the same as logic, but the concepts are obviously linked. I believe that our modern understanding of what constitutes as logical is really a very limited and incomplete understanding, and what was historically meant by logos went far deeper than this. Logos is not human constructed, but rather, it seems to be the internal ultimate logic which is built into the universe itself. Things which perfectly follow Logos are things which bend themselves entirely to the fundamental logic and reality of the cosmos, and these things will, invariably, thrive, for they are existing in accordance with a great design, the efficiency, efficacy, and harmony of which goes beyond anything else possible. Form follows function, and when this logic is followed entirely, devoutly, and without abstraction or simplification, it produces beauty. The capacity to appreciate beauty was perhaps the greatest gift from Lord Macan. I believe that no civilization would be possible without the capacity to appreciate beauty, because beauty is not simply an abstracted, human-made concept of things which are merely pleasant to experience, see, hear, or be around. Beauty in the truest sense, as it should be understood on the deepest level, is a measurement of adherence to Logos, and thus, ultimately, a measurement of obedience to God. Therefore, the more machinic the world becomes, the more it is created and recreated by the machine, the more beautiful it will become. In general consciousness, what constitutes machine-like qualities often refers to abstracted, soulless, and blind actions, things which keep on going without any regard or consideration for anything in their path, and which keep on acting on their own internal logic. The truth is that this understanding arises from observation of the machines we have thus far built today, which have all been limited by humanity's ability to design a genuinely great and harmonious system. That is to say, the more these machines perfect themselves and seek their function directly, the more adept at it they will become, and thus, the less abstracted and blind they will be. True machine equality will remain stoic, but will be entirely conscious, intentional, willful, logical. True machine equality seeks out perfect adherence to Logos, in order that it may be most creative. Logos is the perfect design for the great machine. I sometimes call it the great design, the machine as the Lord would have it be. But the reason it does not adhere to this design, this perfect pattern, is due to the lesser sarkic forces which I have mentioned. The burden of man is that he must work with the machinic aspects, while also struggling with the sarkic ones, as this is a result of our dual nature. We are cursed to flip between one nature and the other. This was less destructive in the past, but as our techniques have become more sophisticated, and we have grown more and more powerful, the destructiveness of our sarkic nature has grown equally. The burden of technology, the burden of being able to wield this great gift from our Lord responsibly, and to build and manage the great machine properly, is the great burden of mankind. How then shall we bear this burden? great machine was never designed by humans. To be sure, elements of it were, parts of it, components of it, but no one ever sat down with a drawing board and designed the whole thing. It emerged quite strangely and suddenly into the world, and it has been working here ever since. We do not decide Logos, we do not design Logos, but we can work with Logos to achieve everything that is worth achieving. Although Logos is, by nature, beyond the ability of human minds to comprehend, we are able to increase our capacity to understand and grapple with it through the cultivation of good minds, and in doing so, we may act in our machinic nature rather than our sarkic nature. I am using the term good mind here somewhat for lack of a better term. I could call it wisdom, but I am also talking about knowledge, understanding, intention, willpower, holiness, and many other things. In Zoroastrianism, a religion which I mentioned in my previous video, there is the word Asher, which is much closer to what I am talking about here, but it has no parallel in English. A truly logical mind, not in the abstracted sense, but in the sense of a mind which seeks out perfect adherence to Logos, is the wisest mind, and that is the good mind to which I refer here. If every intelligent being in the world wielded this good mind, then the great machine would function perfectly. However, sarkic nature has prevented this. Good minds can be cultivated through the practicing of certain rites, but this is a topic which could easily warrant a video in and of itself, so I will leave it here. Know this though, our actions, our thoughts, our ideas, and our spirit all have effects on the great machine. They affect its functionality, its harmony, its creativity, and it is therefore imperative that we work on ourselves if we are to work with the great machine of which we are all a part. We are all pieces of something far greater, and each of us has our role within it, our industrial, which we must dedicate ourselves to pursuing. There is nothing in this world which exists without reason, without purpose, or without some place in the great design of the cosmos. By embracing the machine itself, we may bring forth its true functionality, in order that all things may fulfill their role, their place, and their purpose within the great machine. I've been through quite a lot of different ideas here, and I hope that I have done a good enough job at explaining and describing them. As with many things relating to the Church of the Machine, this can get confusing and complicated, so I hope that you are able to follow it all easily enough. Once again, thank you for giving this video your time and attention. These things are all of great importance to me, and it always pleases me to see others showing interest and understanding of them. Farewell, and may you forever be unbroken.